guys, Frightner22 here, and welcome back to day 26 of my 31 frightening days of Halloween marathon. Tonight we're going to take a look at one of my all-time favorite vampire movies of all time, 1985's Fright Night. Now before I begin, I would just like to first and foremost apologize to everybody that left comments and or personal messages to me over the weekend, because this past weekend I was actually attending Exhumed Films' 24-hour movie horror-thon in Philadelphia, so it was a ton of fun, but totally exhausting, so that's, why I wasn't so quick to thank everybody for subscribing or commenting on my videos, so sorry in advance for that. And before I actually begin tonight's review, I'd like to actually dedicate this review to my buddy Jason from Gut Munchers, because a few days prior to this review actually going live, my buddy Jason actually inquired about whether I would ever review this movie. Well, dude, tonight's your answer. Here it is, my review of Fright Night. So definitely enjoy. If you guys haven't checked that Gut Munchers out, definitely check them out. Gutmunchers.com. All those guys, Jason, just everybody on there does really great work. So check them out for sure. They're a lot of fun. So without further ado, here's my review of 1985's Fright Night. This film is just really phenomenal. As I said, this is one of my favorite vampire films of all time, and it's really easy to see why. It's fun, it's simple, and it's really effective. It really just goes to show you how a simple small, simplistic little story can really capture great feats and just be a ton of fun. This film was written and directed by Tom Holland, who obviously in 1985 gave birth to one of, the better vampire movies in the 80s, Fright Night, but only 3 short years later in 1988 he would give birth to one of the, most iconic killers of the 1980s, that being Chucky in Child's Play, as well as going on to direct several episodes of Tales from the Crypt, as well as directing Thinner. So the plot in this movie actually follows a teenager who stumbles upon his new next-door neighbor and realizes that he is actually a vampire. When nobody believes him, he decides to take it upon himself to confide in a once-famous horror actor named Peter Vincent, played by the great Roddy McDowall of Planet of the Apes fame, to actually, help him investigate this matter and to hopefully exterminate the vampire once and for all. Now, as I said, this plot is really simplistic, but it's really, really fun. I mean, like I said, as simple as this is, it's just a ton of fun. It just really goes to show how you can take a really simple concept and a simple story, and it just really goes to show what the delivery of this, simple concept does. When the delivery is great and you have great actors, just simple things can really come alive in ways that just seem so fresh and original. And that's exactly what Fright Night is. Just so easy. There's, it's just not, it seems absolutely by today's standards really redundant, really unoriginal. But in 1985, this was just a really fun film, and it still holds, really true today and still stays really strong. So that's why I've always really, really enjoyed this movie. It's just a ton of fun. There's just no simple way around that. It's just, completely 150% awesome horror movie fun. Now, the cast in this is just something really wonderful. Everybody in this is just really spot on in all of their respective roles. We have William Ragsdale, who actually plays our teenager, Charlie Brewster. He's just really great, got a really, dry, sarcastic humor about him. Among, movie fans in general, there's always a topic of debate on, like, I guess, which, movie character you relate with the most. And I mean, anytime that it would be my turn to discuss that, I would always argue that the most characters that I identify with personally would have to be Matthew Broderick in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Charlie Brewster from Fright Night. I mean, there's just no easy way around it. The humor that this kid has is just really spot on with the way that I am, and his interest in it, obviously, horror movies in general is something that I've always vibed with too, but there's just always little instances that I always liked about his character. There's a certain scene where it's really small and brief, but it's, it's funny, when him and his friend, Evil Ed Thompson, are walking out of their trigonometry class, and he's actually looking at his sheet because he had just gotten his pop quiz grade back, and he just suddenly goes, "That bastard!" And his friend just laughs at him. I can't even tell you throughout, all, like, my high school career and, further, that I just had to say that so many times anytime I got a bad grade. Just reactions like that, just really struck a chord where I'm like, I've been there 1,000 times, Brewster, it's totally fine. Moving on, we have his best friend, Evil Ed Thompson, who's played by the great Stephen Jeffries, who many of you guys might actually recall from 976 Evil. Moving on, you also have Amanda Bierce, who many of you would recall from Married with Children fame, as well as the great late Roddy McDowall, who I said you guys would probably identify with the most from Planet of the Apes, and of course our great, wonderful vampire played by Chris Sarandon, who would go on to re-team with Tom Holland in 1988's Child's Play, where he would play the role of Detective Mike Norris, if I'm not mistaken, and he's really phenomenal in that film. But Chris Sarandon's vampire character in this, Jerry Danrich, is just really, really terrifying. I mean, I think this film really is just like, the 1980s modern-day take of just, classic Universal Hammer films. It really has that spirit, and not even so much as just, the feel that you get from Roddy McDowall's character playing this old-school actor. There's just something about its vibe and its spirit that really, strikes me as, like, the closest thing to a modern-day retelling at that time of those classic films. And I think a lot of that has to do with Chris Sarandon's, interpretation of a vampire. I mean, he can play that really suave, handsome, sexy, human being to unsuspecting villain, civilians, but when it gets time to getting down and dirty, when it, to attacking victims, he really just goes all out and becomes one really terrifying motherfucker. So that's, a really, hard line to juggle, but, Sarandon does it really, really beautifully in this, so I always loved his interpretation and delivery of a vampire. Now, the effects in this film are always really, really stunning. I just love the practical effects in this film, just really, really solid, vampire designs on, the Jerry Danrich character, as well as Evil Ed Thompson, as you can see on my shirt. And this character in particular just, really steals the show with a lot of, the comic relief in this film. I mean, on my shirt, as you can see, that's just one of the best lines in there, and I'm not even going to attempt to say it, because if you guys haven't seen Fright Night, you just need to hear Evil Ed Thompson deliver that line, because it is so funny. It gets a laugh out of me every single time that I see it. But, keeping back with the makeup effects, everything is just really solid. I mean, the practical effects are really stunning. Just, their interpretation of the vampire designs were just really cool. The fangs, really jagged. Of course, the contact lenses, but they just had this really odd red and yellow tint to them that I just always really, really dug. So, I mean, just really great props to the special effects team and makeup crew that worked on this film, because I think that the look and, the style that they went for still truly stands up today, so I really, really love it for, for that much. But moving on, guys, I just think that this film is just incredibly solid, so for additional viewing, I would absolutely recommend checking out 1989's Fright Night Part 2, where William Ragsdale and Roddy McDowall reprise their respective roles. But good luck finding that movie, because it is currently out of print on DVD and fetches a pretty high price. So if you guys are lucky enough to find that, absolutely check that out. Now, if many of you guys may or may not heard, DreamWorks is actually working on a Fright Night remake scheduled for a 2011 release. Now, if you're asking me, as an up-and-coming director, I think that if it had to be made and it was going to be cast, my first instinct would be to cast Adam Brody of the OC fame and most recently in Jennifer's Body to take on the Charlie Brewster role. There's just something about his dry sense of humor and his delivery of lines and just, the way he handles himself that I think he would fit into that role nicely. In addition, there's one moment in actually the film where Jerry Danrich's character is seducing Brewster's girlfriend, and he picks her and, really is attracted to her because you realize there's a painting in Danrich's, house, and he tells Brewster's girlfriend that he reminds her of a girl that he knew long, long ago, as, he just plants a little seed. So I think that's somewhere to really start in remake territory. Perhaps take a good quarter of the film and really build Danrich's character and flesh him out a little bit, maybe use that as, a starting ground for it. But that's just my opinion. So if you guys haven't seen Fright Night, I don't know what you're waiting for. This is one of my favorite vampire films of all time, and I know it certainly would be many of yours too if you guys hadn't seen it yet. So if you guys have, no better time to pop back out than this Halloween season. As always, guys, thanks again for tuning in to my review, and check out the final 5 days of my 31 Frightening Days of Halloween Marathon all this week. Thanks again, guys. This is Frightener22.